on this Wednesday, the 19th of August, I say thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, because the life lessons that are gleaned by being involved in the hospitality industry, as we have done in the past through many generations of Bermudians working, have allowed us to learn some significant principles of how to live properly and in oneness with our society. And I say that very sincerely, because given the challenges that are faced in our world today, proper interpersonal relationships are something that is not readily communicated between persons as readily as once was available. And people say, oh, you know what, Swanee, it's progress. Well, you know, sometimes one person's version of progress also comes at a price that when they move along down the road, they've realized that they've thrown the baby out with the bathwater. What does that mean? Well, let me just explain that. There was a time when we didn't have running water to the extent, and we used tubs to bath and to also bath the babies. And, sometimes when water was scarce, like in England and the south of Yorkshire, there's not much rain, so persons are having to ration. But we used to ration water. We used to ration water when we did have tubs, and so that the water wasn't deep in the tub. You didn't soak and take bubble baths. You took very practical, necessary personal hygiene cleansing baths growing up in Bermuda. And those who used to bathe the children bathed in bathing tubs. And the saying, throwing the baby out with the bathwater, means that you're in such a hurry that you don't see the little one in there. You pick the little one up in the bathwater and you throw them both over the out in the garden. And we don't want to do that when it comes to what hospitality brings to the human experience. Good hospitality has been proven to be significantly connected to good interpersonal relationships between the service provider and the person looking for the service, the customer. In Bermuda, through decades and now centuries of doing this, both as the owner and as the worker in this space, Bermudians have been cultivated a very significant niche in this space, recognized, celebrated, and the best payment or best gauge of that success wasn't a award that was given to Bermuda. It was the high percentage of repeat factor visitors that came to Bermuda time and time again. The amount of people that went away from Bermuda and gave Bermuda glowing reports, the amount of people that went back to their communities and talked about Bermuda, the amount of visitors in different communities around the world that have pictures of Bermuda in their homes, prominent places in their homes, talking pieces for when people visit them. Oh, where's that picture? Oh, that picture was taken at Horseshoe Bay when we had such a wonderful time celebrating. Or that picture was taken at Elba Beach when we were married. Or that picture was taken when we celebrated the graduation of Junior from university and we all went on a family trip. Or that was our 25th anniversary when we had everyone over at the Pompano Beach Club. These are not things I'm randomly talking about. If you were to take a visit up to Cambridge Beaches, and as you walked into the main hotel lobby, because it's a cottage colony split up, but there's a main, you would see a wall which celebrates people that have been coming to Bermuda for over 100 years. Those types of practices cultivate, celebrate repeat visitors. I remember when I used to run golf events for the Bermuda Department of Tourism 40 years ago, Aerial Sands, Elba Beach, Inverary were hotels that I utilized. St. George's Club Hotel. Out of those four that I named, only the St. George's Club Hotel, which was a timeshare when I opened the golf club there in 1985, is still existent, has survived the test of time and the trials and tribulations of in and out of business relationships and the like, and still is today. And the Elba Beach is heading back through the new ownership connected with DeLorean. But these were places that prided themselves on having very high repeat guest ratios. Even the Inverary now, the property itself, we're down at the waterfront off of Darrell's Wharf, is for sale, and hopefully someone in the hospitality business buys it and is able to incorporate it back into what we know as a hotel property. And I think that's a very good possibility with what we have going on in Bermuda with the Fairmont Southampton Princess Hotel now, with the opening of the beach club. And let me just say thank you and to all those who stood by the redevelopment process. And I raised my hand and say, yes, I'm one that recognized that a property that was compulsory acquired back in the 60s from families that included mine has been repurposed and survived the negative impact of COVID to now be in a position in 2026 to open its beach club up as a precursor to the hotel, which will follow. And we see that the hotel is being refitted. We see them changing the windows up there at the sliding glass windows that go out on the balcony and the like. I've seen a model of what the rooms will look like some time ago as they had conceptualized it, and they did up a model. And we look forward to having a hotel property in Bermuda, once again, that can accommodate large numbers of visitors. And the MICE business, the meeting and incentive business, that is so important that we can then work on. And we saw once that injection of redevelopment, construction came with that property. We've seen interest in Elbow Beach. We've seen interest in other properties. We see the development of further development up there at the Azura up there on the South Shore beaches. And we look with great optimism as other hotel properties. I hold my hopes high that we will see something maybe at Lantana, maybe down at Sonesta, the old Sonesta property that is part of the Hamilton Princess Beach Club. And you have to look forward in that space. Why? Because airlift is an important part of the Bermuda tourism equation. Now, there's those, and I was one of those that always used to tout how important balance. Yes, shout out to our good friend Cromwell Shakir. Balance matters. How balance between cruise and air visitors are to Bermuda. But what we've seen, and what a lot of people don't want to appreciate, is the mindset that occurred when Bermuda went from having 12,000 beds down to 3,500. Well, that sent a signal. Who made that decision? Certainly wasn't the government, although in the early 80s, government did make a decision to move more towards international company business to provide balance from being an economy that relied on hospitality as it did in the 60s and the 70s. So government did make a decision, and I often tell people that that came in tandem with the Condominium Act that came about in the early 80s. So what do you know about the Condominium Act? Well, you know, when you first enter politics formally as a young person, you remember some of the acts that first got introduced. And I remember back in the early 80s, 81, 82, 83, there was much talk in caucuses about the Condominium Act. And yes, as a 25-year-old, I ran in the 1983 election, so I would have remembered some of the things that were being talked about at that time. I would have remembered that there was a housing crisis at that time. I would remember that in the 70s, when I was playing golf representing Bermuda with folks like Lloyd James, that up and down South Shore, all those apartments that people were building was to accommodate and complement the hospitality industry. I do remember when Bermuda transferred to getting more international business presence in Bermuda. We called them exempt company presence in Bermuda, that they needed apartments, and they would have made representation to homeowners to give them they would give them 5-year leases on their property, sometimes even paying up front, of which some owners, because the banks weren't giving families mortgages at that time, especially families from the African Bermudian community, were not getting mortgages in the 70s and early 80s. And thanks. And I'll talk a little bit about that too. That all weighs into the equation. So when people are talking about airlift, they need to talk about who made the decision to go from having 12,000 rooms down to 3. It wasn't the workers. It wasn't we that were not in those boardrooms. It was people that saw, I can take this property and make it into a condominium. And yeah, some folks doing that were disingenuous, because they would have gotten permits to build properties that they converted to condominiums with the proviso that they would provide a hotel property, and that never occurred. And when I go from east to west of this country, having one who celebrates the history of this country, I can tell you that between 1921 and 1933, Bermuda in those times, 100 years ago, had 7 or 8 golf courses, albeit many of them were 9-hole golf courses, connected mainly with hotels. We became a golf resort 100 years ago. Less than 20 years after the formation of the United States Golf Association. And if we had military golf courses in the 1800s, we were, outside of Britain, one of the countries that took golf around the world. In 1928, Bermuda, as a tourism destination, would have played host to a Bermuda Open Golf Championship that would have had in its field Willie McFarland, from Aberdeenshire, who would have won the U.S. Open in 1925. And he didn't win the Bermuda Open. We would have had, as the golf pro, at the 2 9-hole golf courses built by Devereux Emmett at Riddles Bay and at Belmont, the Nickel Thompson, who later became a Canadian Hall of Famer, the older brother of the great golf architect from Canada, Stanley Thompson, getting Canadian visitors here. We would have had the Belmont Manor Hotel and Golf Course open in the golf course open around 1924-25, connected with the Inverary, the same Inverary I mentioned that I used to run golf events for in the 80s. Some 80 years later. So, 60 years later, sorry. What I'm saying is that up and down this country, tourism was built on relationships with key persons who could afford a Bermuda experience, even back then. Let us not forget that we were in the business of providing value for money, and people recognized that discerning quality that we possessed. Balance. We could do more with less visitors who could afford a Bermuda experience. And as a consequence, Bermudians, including myself, interacted with visitors who were of the highest order from the communities they came from. And I would dare say that many a visitor visiting Bermuda did as much for Bermudians as many people doing quite well in Bermuda. I don't mind saying that. That's the truth. People might not like that I would be honest enough to say that, but I celebrate those visitors. People come to me. I met a family at Belmont yesterday. And I went up to him and I said, so thankful that you're here playing golf. You're getting a little bit of shade underneath the porch waiting for your cab. I says, how was your experience? Wonderful. Your golf course is beautiful. The greens are so wonderful and lush. I says, we're thankful. We've had a good rain and we've got a wonderful crew, small as it is, providing and making sure that the course is in good shape. Where are you from? And they said, Connecticut. And they said, why are you smiling? I said, because Connecticut folk to me are some of the most important visitors I'll ever meet. And they looked and they say, why? Because I have a Connecticut connection. They said, where? I says, Danbury. They says, we don't stay far from Danbury. And they gave a name with a W, Willingham, something like that. I said, yes. In the 70s, when I was inspired to go away to school, I had no connections to get away out of Bermuda, and I wanted to go play golf. And I caddied for a man in Bermuda who I told, I'm trying to go to school in the States, and I'm walking into a blank wall. I want to play golf. And he threw down a few golf balls for me and says, hit me some shots. And I impressed him. And he says, have you ever played overseas? I says, yes, I played in the Orange Bowl Junior Championship last year. He says, wow, my son's entered to play in that tournament in 3 weeks. That alone spoke volumes, because you can't get into the Orange Bowl unless you have a record and the ability to gain entry into the tournament. I told him the scores I shot. 3 out of the 4 were in the 70s, my first trip outside of Bermuda. And he says, when I get back home, I'll make some calls. And I said to myself, sure, right. Well, 2 months later, I got a letter in the mail from Joe Sanculius from Palm Beach Junior College, and the rest is history. The pro from Ridgewood Country Club in Danbury, Connecticut, who was an assistant at Ridgewood Country Club in Ridgewood, New Jersey, one of the most iconic golf clubs he was trained at, saw something in me. I fast forward 20 years later, I started a ladies golf event for the Bermuda Department of Tourism, and the former LPGA champion came and played as a favor for Marilyn Smith to help me start that tournament. She's one of the founders of the LPGA, and that lady, Gloria Arrett, and I got talking, and I told her that story, and I said Bob Clowen, and tears ran in her eyes. She says, I work for Bob. I come from that community. And I went on and told stories, and Doug Dial, who was the first pro to win 3 Bermuda Opens in a row back in 68, 67, 68, and 69, before Walter King won it in 70, went on to work in that same community in Danbury. The same community that produced Ken Green, who was my roommate. I can't set this up. I didn't plan that. No Bermudian planned that. The great man looking above planned that. Tourism planned that. Hospitality planned that. Putting us in touch with people like Mr. Kamen that used to come to the Belmont Hotel every year in February and March. One of the top prosecutors in the Nuremberg cases was coming to Bermuda, getting to know us, helping Bermudians go away to school in New Jersey and the like. And there are many other Mr. Kamings that used to come to Bermuda, staying at the Castle Harbor, interacting with the Woolridges, interacting with the Simonses that lived there, interacting with Flavia and the like that worked there, interacting with Walter Kings and Brian Linders and Robbie Linders that worked there, making it possible for Bermudians to go to America, get out of Bermuda, broaden the horizons. That's the beauty of hospitality. Let me tell you this. That's the beauty of working in finance and in insurance, because at some point in time, you have to take your academic ability and interact with people. And there are many people out there unequipped, ill-equipped to interact with people because they haven't had the broad, diverse experience in order to know how to strike up a conversation in different arenas. Hospitality teaches you that. When we get more Bermudians switched on to hospitality, not just talking about it, not just writing about it, doing it. I teach. Experience is the best teacher. Practice is the only way to get good at anything. So many people feel that okay, show me what, tell me what, and they can do that. The only way is to be immersed. The only way to get better social skills, no matter what you do, is to be immersed in it. To have people take an interest in you. To have people mentoring you. That's the beauty of hospitality. That's what we did and can do and have the ability to do so well. And there are many visitors still coming to Bermuda, valuing an authentic Bermuda experience. Valuing. And sometimes we, because of social media and sensationalizing, we will sensationalize the bad experiences that happen. Bad experience happen every day. One's happening right now somewhere, either in Bermuda or around the world. But at the same time, there are many great experiences, wonderful experiences going unnoticed. There's a young fella, Mr. Joquin, who looks for golf balls, sells golf balls at Belmont, finds them around the Bermuda, has a YouTube channel. And when I went to Pennsylvania about a year and a half ago, a retired accountant that used to come to Bermuda when he was in business, now he volunteers to be the starter in lieu of the golf membership that he gets. So he's bartering. He's an accountant. He knows how to make his retirement money stretch. He doesn't want to spend it on golf, but if he can be the starter a couple of days. When he heard I was from Bermuda, we struck up a conversation. He said, the last time I was there, the highlight of my vacation was running into the guy Joquin. He went to his phone and showed me Joquin's YouTube about golf balls and his experience with visitors, and it was something that I learned from a visitor overseas, a visitor touched by Mr. Joquin. Growing up, I remember Mr. Eamon Hunt, and Mr. Eamon Hunt was a revered man because he won Captain Cup match. Was sending a shout out to my Somerset family out there because they're still celebrating and giving me a hard time, but we're coming back in St. George's. We're coming back strong. I know I've been saying it once or twice or three times before, but I mean it now. We mean it. We mean it. We mean it. But Mr. Eamon Hunt, when I was a young man, was an older man. And Mr. Eamon Hunt had his little ukulele, he had his sailboat, and he used to take couples and he used to take them on an authentic, romantic, you hear of Venice? Mr. Eamon Hunt did that experience, going through Somerset Bridge and Wreck Road and taking people around Elis Harbor, picking them up at Lantana and taking them around. That could be a very successful business for someone taking little tours around Castle Harbor, taking little tours around the areas from Grotto Bay, doing it for folks that are at the Lauren or at nearby Mid-Ocean Club spending a little time. Those are the types of experiences that, are very unique and very quiet. Not everyone wants a high-hyped vacation experience. There are many people out there, particularly in the shoulder months, and I often talk about the importance of those shoulder months, those months like October, November, December, like February, March, April, for instance, where opportunity to fill unsold inventory exists in Bermuda. Bearing in mind that there are less hotel rooms than was 20, 30 years ago. So as a consequence, there's less demand for the airlines to be able to have the same presence they would have had during those time periods. Because some of the larger properties, like a Sonesta, like a Belmont, like a Lantana, like a Bermudiana, would have transformed into other economic entities. And so they cut their cloth accordingly. And you see more private jets in Bermuda. Why? Because some of those properties became business properties. And it's a moving target because when you have recessions like in 2008, 9, 10, when you have COVID like in 2000, businesses start to recalibrate. So you start seeing businesses starting to outsource. I mean, I remember, yes, during that recession when the government of Bermuda came to the aid, for instance, of the Bank of Butterfield for $250 million. And after it saved itself somewhat, recalibrated somewhat, got on its feet with new ownerships, it started downsizing, outsourcing, and persons who, and making a way so that shareholders could smile again. Decisions to aid the bottom line, not necessarily for anything socially. Yet, I'm low enough to know that there are entities such as that'll commission social reports and bring people like Dr. Carol Swain to Bermuda to examine the social climates of Bermuda, and then make business decisions according to it. And housing and things like that don't necessarily take front center stage. So we need to make sure that balance exists. And whilst I am fully in favor of us moving in the direction that we're moving, getting more hotel beds, getting beyond 5,000 hotel beds one day, looking out there is a lot more realistic rather than looking to be where we once were, right? We must make a concerted effort to sell the unsold inventory that exists during periods in those months I mentioned. October, November, December, February, March, April, maybe a portion of May if possible, if necessary. Finding ways to excite the people that would enjoy a Bermuda experience. And I'm here to say, and I'll keep saying it, and I say it quietly, and I say it here on this show, that there are people out there connected with Bermuda, both here and overseas, that have been part of events that have stood the test of time, that reinvent themselves as communities overseas reinvent themselves. And I make no apologies to say that because of my trade, I know they're connected with country club communities. And country club communities aren't just golf communities. Country club communities are golf, they're swimming, they're social, they're dining communities. People connect in their communities according to their social economic status. And the late Jim Woolridge always used to say that we are a discerning community tourism destination, visitor destination. And he said it a lot more brutally than I was prepared to say it. But he was right. And we haven't changed in that respect. Just a week and a half ago, someone spotted me who hosted me at a very exclusive club. And they hosted me as a favor of a friend. So I didn't know them. I knew the friend and the friend of the friend. But I'm thankful that when I visited them, I used old school methodology. What do you mean old school methodology? Well, I was taught by folks that says when you go somewhere, always know that as a Bermuda representative, you're always representing Bermuda. You're always representing your family. Put your best foot forward. You'll see me with my Bermuda crest and my blazer most times. And so when I went to this club to play, I always carry clothing that I'll wear when we dine after. Always go in the locker room, get cleaned up, and come out looking a little bit more like I was going to a prize presentation. That was what was taught to us. That was what was taught to us in the hospitality industry. You couldn't come to Belmont with your shoes not shined. That carries forward. You had to have your tie tied up to the, if you wore a bow tie, it couldn't be loose and slack. Those things carry forth in other things. And so it's easy for someone to feel comfortable when you know how to fit in. And I see so many people representing Bermuda, and I'm pleased to see at Cup Match, notwithstanding how we did, I'm pleased to see my players going to events representing Cup Match. Both Somerset, who did it all along, and St. George's now in blazers, looking smart. That's a great start. And for those who tell me, look, you got to free up. There's a time and a place to do everything. That's one of the old school methodologies that we were taught. And there's a time to represent in the highest order. There's a time to showcase who you're representing. And I'm so thankful for those people in the hospitality industry that taught me that. And the hospitality industry for me isn't just about the persons I talk about the most. The waiters, the waitresses who were much older than me. They were the parents of the people I was going to school with who was working as waiters and waitresses, notwithstanding some of them had the educational aptitude to have been lawyers and doctors. They made sure out of our household came doctors and lawyers. Oh, yes. Out of our household came persons who went on to run major companies in the Caribbean like PwC or Ernst & Young. And yes, that's right. You're a lot of people in Bermuda that punched above their weight. For the last 30, 40 years, there were given values from persons who were not just who were waiters and waitresses, who worked in housekeeping, who worked in the boiler rooms, providing for their family, who worked 2 and 3 jobs, because they taught you how to take your circumstance in life and make it work for you and your family. That's what hospitality that's what the importance of hospitality is. And yes, I have my bully pulpit here to be able to talk about hospitality in a way that I don't have to read a manual to be able to share to you its importance. I learned it from people. I learned it from persons who had photographic memories, taking orders from people and going in the kitchen and reciting them in proper order. I had persons I know practice that, were taught that, practice their memories so that it could allow them to absorb. And they were taught by persons, their grandparents, and if they were lucky, their great-grandparents, who valued values, who valued values. And I'm here to say, therein lies where we must go. Therein lies what I feel is important, the fundamentals. Having a firm hold on the circumstances means that you have to have proper aim, proper vision, proper understanding of the direction you want to go. Taking proper stance and posture against what comes up against you. Knowing that once you've got your fundamentals in place, that you have to just relax and enjoy this life. Be thankful for what we have. Those are things that are critical to being successful in the hospitality industry. Because those persons staying in room 145 here for a week have something that they left to get away from, flew here or sailed here to spend time here to enjoy a different experience. So when I celebrate the workers out there that I learned from, let me tell you, one of the real reasons I admire them so is because I knew them and I knew their families. And with years behind me now, I know even better that they were leaving circumstances that would have caused them to go there and talk about all their problems, but they chose to work at a high quality and at the right and appropriate moments, maybe in the staff room or wherever, maybe talk about what they wanted to talk about. But they were professional in what they did. And the visitor was able to be focused on. Many of our hotel workers that I came up with, and yes, I pick on Belmont and Castle Harbor the most. I touch on St. George's Club a little bit. But that's where I learned my trade, at Port Royal Golf Course, at the Belmont Manor Hotel and Golf Resort, at the Castle Harbor Resort. That's where I learned and cut my teeth to learn what I learned, to be able to do what I did. And I want to tell you that we had persons working in our dining room. We had persons working at concierge that could go anywhere in this world and represent Bermuda at the drop of a dime. In 1968, the first person of African descent in Bermuda represented Bermuda, to my recollection, represented the Bermuda Golf Association for the first time at a course that is probably, everybody's got a bucket list. My bucket list golf courses is Pine Valley, followed by Royal Melbourne. Llewellyn Peter Tucker went to Royal Melbourne to represent Bermuda for the first time. He went with Mr. George Boardman. I'm not sure who it may have been Mr. James Pearman. May have been B.S. Ingham. Someone will call me at one point in time and says this was the team. But Llewellyn Peter Tucker was there and Mr. George Wortman were there. Mrs. Wortman was there because she reminded me that she went to Royal Melbourne when I talked to Mrs. Chappell then. And Llewellyn Peter Tucker took his secret weapon with him. When Llewellyn Tucker and I went to Fiji in 1980 for his last trip to represent Bermuda, we went alone. I was in college, but when he went to represent Bermuda to make history for the first time, he took his secret weapon. And his secret weapon was a lady named Claudette Tucker. Now, I don't know Miss Tucker's maiden name, and I never called her Claudette. She was Mrs. Tucker to me. Her son Damon and I played football together at Berkeley. But I want to tell you, there was no lady more classier than Claudette Tucker. And she was the social director for the then Fairmont Princess when we were young children coming along. So I'm not sure. Princess wasn't open in 1968, and I don't know where she was working then, but she was class personified. No flies on them. And Llewellyn Peter Tucker, the great man that he was a very jovial, humble man with multi-talents. Now, I remember him driving bus. I remember him working for British American Insurance as well, in the insurance industry. So he transitioned and worked there. But I also remember him doing his trade. And you're going to say, what was his trade? He represented Bermuda in golf. I says, no, he was an amateur golfer. He was a musician of the highest order. He played for the Aldano Sextet. I listened to them play in the nightclub at the Belmont. I listened to them be the lead act at the Belmont during New Year's Eve party. When on the stage at Belmont, we transitioned the dining room into a nightclub for reservations. And if we had 70, 80 tables, we had covers for that many. Oh yes. We transformed the dining room, the main dining room at Belmont, that could probably had 100 tables because we had an extension around the corner, into a outstanding nightclub for New Year's Eve. And I listened to them play that big band song, and I thought I was listening to at that time Billy Eckstein. What do you know about Billy Eckstein? Yeah, he used to come up Port Royal and play golf too with Glenda and the like. John Swan Sr., the father, he used to come up there and play golf with us. The great musicians, the entertainers of Bermuda were part of that hospitality equation. They were in every hotel in Bermuda. And I see signs of that coming back. That's good. Where there are properties that are having entertainment. There are restaurants that are featuring local entertainment as well. But we had quality local entertainment. And the Aldano Sextet was one of them. And Peter Tucker was the saxophone player. It was outstanding. Mr. Rowling was a part of that band. I met one of the gentlemen who died in 2024. I'm trying to think of his name. He was an integral part of that. We were in the hospital together, and his daughter came to me and says, I listened to you, and my dad's right here, and I went to see him. He was part of the Aldano Sextet. Yeah. But they weren't alone. You had Bermudians who were musicians, tiling floors, and golf pros, and doing them all within the same week. I'm talking about Frankie Rebane, the first Bermudian to qualify for the British Open in 1971, was a tiler by trade and a professional musician. He's a professional musician? Frankie just picked the guitar, didn't he? He played here and there in a few hotels in Bermuda. I said, no. Frankie was the musical choreographer for Brian Butterfield. And before that, he worked for Lance Hayward down at Half Moon Hotel in Jamaica. Before he was a golf pro, he was a musician, playing for one of Bermuda's top international artists. That type of respect and recognition where Bermudians were able to go to Jamaica. You know, we're bringing folk in from overseas. They were coming and getting our talent and taking them there to allow them to entertain their guests. Now, let me say this. At Half Moon did have a little interest in Bermuda because Heinz Simowitz, who was very integral in the Belmont, in the Elbow Beach, later would go to Half Moon. So the connections between Bermuda and Jamaica were real. The family that owned Lantana, the Young family, had hotels in Jamaica as well. And as well as that, they had properties in Vermont as well. So Bermuda was not just operating here. Our Bermudians were participating in hospitality in other places. And as we start encouraging Bermudians to go forward in hospitality, we must look at ways in which we can help them broaden their horizons. I'll say that again. And I say that from the bottom of my heart, with every being. I say that to why a person from Connecticut holds reverence to me. Because it took someone from Connecticut to come to Bermuda to see that I needed to be out of here. It took a person from Connecticut to come to Bermuda in 1976 and recognize that this guy needs to be where his heart desires. That's the way the great one works. You have to have a vision, a passion, and belief, and you'll be surprised where you can go. It's greater than wealth. Because you have it inside of you. It can't evaporate when the recession comes and takes it all. It doesn't take it away when COVID comes and causes everything to shut down. It's what sustains you. It's what allows you to recalibrate. And that's what we learned in hospitality. And yes, I talked about Peter Tucker, but I could have very easily talked about Hubert Smith. I could have very easily talked about A.E. Dolly Smet. They say, well, Smet didn't sing. But the interaction between business and entertainers and workers was a fluid dynamic that was existent in Bermuda. And visitor. Certain businesses did it better than others. So I mentioned A.E. Dolly Smet. I would mention Victor Mello Jr. I would mention Joan Mason, particularly from my experience as persons who I knew how to do it better. And so that's why I believe in hospitality for Bermuda. And I believe in more Bermudians being encouraged to be in hospitality. That's why I would speak out, have spoken out against this profiling and digitalization of robotic thinking that's permeated the world, that's carried forth in Bermuda. That's why I would speak in favor of finding ways to get visitors to see more of Bermuda. You let a visitor meet the late Rip Simons. And then they find out you're from Bermuda overseas. That's all they talk about. Who are the Rip Simonses of today? What does it take to create that type of atmosphere? Whilst we're at it, let me just send a special shout out to Mamma Mia's down there in Hamilton Parish. And that's a shameless plug. Someone that says yes, because I see visitors, Bermudians. I know people that make it their regular Saturday or Sunday stop off. I see visitors stopping me to say, how do I get to Mamma Mia's? All for a beautiful fish sandwich that has a good reputation. I want to send a special shout out to Mrs. Simons from the Belmont days, the sister of Devoy Augustus, who was the sister maitre d' at the Belmont, who I had the pleasure of seeing. Miss Joan Simons, I had the pleasure of seeing her recently. I often mention these ladies who took an interest in young people when they worked in hospitality, when they interacted with visitors, when they consult visitors. So what you mean consult visitor? A visitor that comes for a week, 2 weeks, every year, twice a year, requesting the same chambermaid, the same room, the same table. Recognize the value that they're receiving, even if the space in which they occupy doesn't value them the same. That is why Connecticut means so much to me. West Palm Beach means so much to me. Certain places in the UK and Europe where I applied my trade mean so much to me. Certain people around the world, Argentina, Mexico, mean so much. Because when you are trained around persons in hospitality, you get a diverse development that far exceeds that piece of paper that might be in a frame that says you have a BA or BS or MSc or even a PhD. And there are many that don't have those papers framed who have the depth of understanding of dealing with this world, who we, if we recognize it, could still be utilized to help our country today. I appreciate you all. 297-1027 is the number to dial. I truly appreciate you today. It's been some on my heart to share these type of things with you about hospitality. I had an experience the other day that was very humbling, being recognized by someone. They rate establishments in the world, and some establishments get high ratings, but only people with the money or the contact can get access to them. I don't rate them to the same extent. I love going to places like a Bethpage, for instance, that has access to all. It might be pricey, Pebble Beach and the like. And some places have origins that they're not even proud of. But there are people that come through those places with good hearts, good intentions, and we must, like in cricket, play each shot, see each person on their merit. Hospitality teaches you how to do that, believe it or not. Hospitality teaches you the importance of dealing with one guest at a time, how to measure twice and cut once, knowing there is no cookie cutter to deal with situations. You must evaluate them on their merit. I send a special shout out to Granaway Lane, to Miss Barbara Swan this morning. I'll be up there to check you out very shortly. Hospitality and the hospitality industry. The significance of getting more Bermudians working in the hospitality industry is something that we must, as families, as communities, see the importance of and see the value in doing it. The Corporation of Hamilton, I saw a promotion that I was very impressed with. Send a special shout out to Mr. Dwayne Keynes for that initiative that they're putting together, celebrating different aspects of it. The people that are in the mixology business and the like, the craft that is being cultivated with it. That is important. The artists that we have out there, the young talent, my cousin Damar Mabry and those young people that are in music, we had to help them. Send a special shout out to Mr. Danny O'Connor out there, who loves to host shows at some of his establishments and host musicians. We appreciate that, involving some of our Bermudan artists and keeping them engaged. Thinking of Randy Lambert, my good friend out there, who in the entertainment business was my Bermuda version of Jimi Hendrix. Yes. And in closing, I just want to say, if it's the will of the Lord, I'll be with you next week on Tourism in Focus. And you all have a blessed day.
Bermuda Live on YouTube. Subscribe now.